just to cut to the chase. Oh, it's streaming. Awesome.
Yeah, we're just about there.
It is the adorable phase. And we're not talking about business owners. There's no adorable phase with that, but
Great. We are live here on Quantum Leap for the second segment, and we're going to do a special segment on sales conversations. And, Pradnya is actually coming on the Ripple Effect at noon, but she was able to join us for this one. And she happens to be one of the best people to talk about on this topic. And Cory is also amazingly knowledgeable about sales, a little bit different, kind of two different styles, a little bit, I would say. But Pradnya, if you don't mind just introducing yourself and kind of tell us about a little bit of your experience in sales, but also what you do, not sales related to.
Lovely. Thanks again for having me here, Cory and David. My name is Pradnya Leitner, and I am a mindset coach for purpose and impact-driven entrepreneurs, professionals, and individuals. And my philosophy is really helping people understand their mindset so they can actually put the horse before the cart. Simply put, I help people set a goal that they previously thought unattainable because our belief system keeps us shackled. And once they have set that quantum leap sort of a goal, then step by step, how can they transform their thinking, their mindset, their beliefs, their behaviors, their habits, and so then ultimately their result. So it's a very much inward transformation that gets reflected in inspired action, because action indeed is the name of the game. And then you can be entitled to your results. So David, does that help?
Yeah. And I don't know if I forgot to mention that you were also my business coach, and I went through your program, and we still kind of are on a number of calls each week, but you and B and I were the big difference in my life. And it's just amazing what somebody like Pradnya can do for you, can completely change your life around. So, and I still use a lot of the teachings that was kind of the seed for where my thought has went, and you've continued to grow since I even first met you. So it's amazing, all these ideas and things that you have. So that's going to be a little bit different discussion. And I think there's so much to talk about with you, but I think you really started as a saleswoman before you were anything else. You've even said, I'm not a one-trick pony anymore, but you were, the sales star for companies like Salesforce or IBM. If you don't mind just sharing a little of that background and kind of how you cut your sales chops, so to speak, and then maybe how you've evolved too, because I really see so much growth in you in terms of your knowledge.
Don't you think that David is a terrific interviewer? um, Indeed, I started my professional journey with IBM in corporate sales, and then kept growing with the company. And then I think seventh year into my journey with IBM, I was responsible for multi-million dollar revenue responsibility to just key accounts in Silicon Valley, Apple, Cisco, and Talent Cadence. And I would say it taught me a lot about sales. And then coming on to Salesforce, I was responsible for helping them launch their startup, which was at the time called Analytics Cloud, into the big corporation that the Salesforce company is. And again, that was a tremendous, learning curve and a growth opportunity as well. So I would say I did learn a lot about sales in the corporate world in terms of execution side of it, the metrics, the numbers, the quantitative data, and all of that. However, I must say that the mindset that is required to sell from all your heart and some more is something that I acquired on this journey as an entrepreneur, and particularly mindset-based coach for purpose and impact-driven entrepreneurs. So that really is the subtle difference, mindset versus the execution piece. And both these pieces have to come together.
Great. And I did want to do kind of a panel discussion today where I asked you guys the questions. I actually have a fair amount of experience in sales, but more selling ideas than products. And it's something I've kind of more junior partner on that, but I will kind of couch some of these questions with some of my knowledge. But and I just think it's good if we kind of get through these questions and try to keep it moving to provide the most knowledge and insights. And I wanted to ask both Cory and you, because you really have different perspectives and kind of feed off one another in so many ways. Just tell us about it, and I can go to Cory first, about your philosophy and approach to sales success, just in a nutshell.
For me, it's really about learning the process that works within the business to feel more confident in the sales conversation. I came from, a background of not involved in sales, much more engineering. And even when I launched my business doing software engineering, essentially, I rarely ever really had to sell. Obviously, there was sales involved, but people came to me knowing that I could, as the expert in the field, and they needed what I did. I didn't have a lot of competition to deal with. And when I got into coaching, and before I even actually stepped into the field to go into the training, the first thing they say is, to be a trainer, a coach, and a helper, you actually start out as a salesperson, right? And so that was like terrifying for me. And I immediately went to some sales coaches and learned more about the relationship sales process to feel more confident. So my philosophy is really around, develop the skills and understand that no matter what you do, you are a salesperson first, especially in an entrepreneurial business. Because if nobody's buying from you, it doesn't matter how expert you are, you've got nobody to serve. And so sales is a part of that service.
Perfect. Pradnya, that's why we're going to really drill down on sales this year. And it's such a great segment to start with. Pradnya, if you don't mind.
Yes, great start, Cory. I do believe that, let me actually pose a question to the viewers here. When you think of sales, do you feel that it's slimy, that it's sleazy? And if it does feel that way, then there's a blockage in your internal state, right? So if we really look at sales, I think David or Cory, one of them said it, selling is serving. Selling is serving. And let me qualify that, okay? I'm not talking about brute force. I'm not talking about coercion, pardon my language, but shoving something down somebody's throat. I am talking about if you totally believe in your product or service, you know it's going to fetch transformation in the prospective lead or client that you're talking to, then it is your moral obligation and a duty to help that person by selling that person, because then you can serve that person. And selling gets easier when your effort is so maniacally focused on serving that you know what you can offer. You wouldn't shy away. Some cheesy yet meaningful examples. If somebody has a particular disease and you know you have the tablet for that person to cure their disease, would you be shy and tiptoeing around or apologetic? None of that. You would just go ahead because you know you're helping that individual. However, again, one more qualifier. When you're selling, okay, and I'll use an analogy, but first to really explain this, when you're selling, there are three things that we need to understand: the problem, the solution, and the transformation. Problem, does this person that I'm talking to genuinely have the problem that I can solve with my product and service? And if you can't solve it, then that is called manipulation. So when you go to the doctor, the physician sees you and says, hey, I can help you with this. But let's say if you didn't have a disease, but some, physician tried to sell you something, which none of the physicians most likely are, most of them don't do this, but that would be considered malpractice. So what if we have that concept in sales to never practice malpractice? So does the prospect or lead have a problem that my product or service can solve? then is my belief in my product and service really off the chart because I know my heart is in serving and the product really delivers that, right? That is the solution. Then are you articulating that solution in a really succinct way, and you can meet the prospect or lead? And the last part is that you have to give an idea, paint the picture in the prospect's mind of what transformation it is that you're promising the person, for them to latch on to that idea and with their own volition go with you, in the sales process. So selling is really, in a nutshell, leading somebody down the path of mutual agreement, not a brute force. All right, that would be it, David.
Great. And I did want to clarify too that I know Cory's had a big impact on, helping me give the nuts and bolts part of the business. And we kind of go back and forth on some of this with mindset coach versus nuts and bolts of the business. And I see you so strong on both of those. You don't, you teach more the mindset as opposed to the nuts and bolts. And Cory's actually teaches both too, but I just wanted to clarify that. And I think Cory, we actually kind of discuss so many of these topics just like week in and week out. And I think that's hugely valuable to have kind of a sales mastermind a little bit, because we don't see where we're weak. You actually give me a lot of tips too on things I should do better, or how, I ask you questions, and you do provide this sales knowledge. But to somebody who's new or struggling, maybe they get into a new field, they don't kind of have that confidence in their product or their sales process. How do you get started on improving your techniques, Cory?
Well, that was a really good point, because as Pradnya brought up, do you really believe in your products and services? And I think that there can be a strong belief in what you provide, but sometimes the client can also be somewhat intimidating. Like, do I really have what it takes to help them, or is this going to be successful? And so there's a lot of talk lately about imposter syndrome, which I think is kind of it's a specific label for something that covers a lot of different feelings. And there can be, I've just, I've experienced this as a coach, and I see this and we've even talked to some people who are experts at sales who feel it more difficult to sell themselves as a coach, because suddenly now you're kind of diving into, like, do I have this expertise, but do I have the ability to really coach this person? And so that really comes. So what I do is get more into the sales process of it, right? Let's have the conversations and opening up and listening, having specific questions. And also, so we use a process of listening to how somebody communicates, and then working with them, working back with them on that communication style. Like, if they're moving towards a goal and they talk about goals, we're going to kind of move towards a goal as well. If they're talking about getting away from problems, we're going to get away from that as well. So then we can truly understand them and come back to really decide if we can help them and take them through maybe, a visualization of the process we're going to use when we work with them. And that leads to confidence on both sides and gets over some of that syndrome. And that's especially true for people who have not been in their business for very long. They're just starting to get started as a coach. So coming armed with some good communication skills helps a lot in overcoming those feelings, as well as working on the mindset side of things.
Yeah, I know one thing that's helped me, and it's probably helped you guys, is actually have some good salespeople try to sell you things or buy some things from them and see what they do. And I that's helped me a lot. I don't know if you have any comments on this topic, Pradnya.
I 200% agree with you. Once you have the mindset down pat, then you've got to understand the quantitative side of sales. Absolutely. I mean, what Cory said there is worth its weight in gold. There are two parts to the process, in the execution side or the quantitative side. You have to know the actual sales process, sales conversation, because there are various stages that you're taking your prospective client through. And once you know all of that, then it becomes a subconscious, unconscious behavior. Thereby, you can vacate your energy to be fully available to engage in that sales conversation. Right? When you know what questions you're posing, what stages you're taking the client through, right? So that's that. So again, 200% agree with you on that, Cory. And then the second is the number side. You ought to figure out, how many people do you need to have outreach to be able to have certain number of appointments. From there, how effectively do you sell? What is your conversion rate? And once you know all of that, you literally reverse engineer to get yourselves the optimal chance at succeeding in sales. Now, here's the thing. Let's say your conversion rate is, let's say you're just starting and your conversion rate is 20%. Well, you will be doing much better. I'm just picking up a worst case scenario. Your conversion rate is 20%. So you have to have 5 sales conversations or appointments before you can onboard one person as a client. Now, here's the thing. The mindset again kicks in. Let's say the first 3, 4 people that you spoke with said no. No is not a forever no. They just haven't deemed or perceived the value. And sales is not about brute forcing. So you leave that person alone ultimately. You can come back to them at a later point. So then when you're on that 5th sales call, what is your mindset? As Cory so astutely alluded to it, are you in an imposter syndrome that I can't sell well? What if you shift from there to saying, I'm really here to help this person, identify this person's problems, what their aspirations are, and if my product provides the solution to bridge that gap, I'm just going to articulate that because I have understood the sales conversation before and in a way maybe even reviewed it. And so that is it. So on the call, even though you had 4 no's, on that call, your energy is totally focused on serving the client. You're not thinking about whether I get the sale or not. And thereby, as a byproduct, you land up selling the person because that person knows they're best interested in your heart, not your commission or numbers.
Great. And this next question falls into the category of oftentimes we kind of don't know what we don't know in terms of you guys being more advanced at sales. Often the frame of the overall frame of everything people have is completely off. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to kind of ask a question in the panel of something that maybe we haven't talked about that you think is important, or just whatever you want to ask. And you can provide your insight on that question too. First, yeah. Pradnya, I'll start with you.
David, I want to qualify that question just a little bit, or clarify that question rather. You're just asking for a free piece of advice or anything specific about the process? Sorry, I didn't.
Really, if there's something I've left out that is an important thing to know about sales, and that this goes back to coaching versus teaching, that you teach people things because there's so many things that you teach that they have no idea that they need to know those things, but they're so hugely important. So is there something out there that you need to teach people about sales that they don't know about?
Yeah, I would just say at a very high level, and again, A, in the interest of time, and then B, it's a very in-depth conversation. So we'll just kind of briefly touch upon it. Only 2 to 4% of your results are controlled by your conscious thinking mind. 96 to 98% of your daily behavior or operation is controlled by your unconscious or subconscious mind. So if you're feeling the imposter syndrome, it's because intellectually you know you're capable, but subconsciously you don't have belief in you being able to do it. So again, it's a very high level solution, and without understanding the nitty-gritties and the entirety of the process might not be superbly helpful, but at least you can get a preview into it. You ought to have a goal. To be able to sell, to be able to take no's, to be able to still be so service oriented and heart centered, you ought to have a goal. And that goal is an image in your mind that you often go to and get emotionally involved in. And selling somebody is serving somebody. It is just creating a bridge for you to accomplish that goal. You would go against something, and by that I mean, if you're feeling uncomfortable, you're just getting started, why would you do something that's uncomfortable for you? Only because there's something in it for you, and that something in it is what's your goal. What's your goal? Why do you want to sell this person? And when your goal is at the center of your mind or on the screen of your mind, it becomes easier to overcome the imposter syndrome. So that's where I'll wrap it up.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. Thank you. And where I would go too is, especially for people who are getting started or feel uncomfortable in sales, is to research different ways of doing sales. Take different classes. There is no one right way to do it. I have studied the Sandler method. I have the Ascentive. When I worked with Ascentive, we brought in the top salespeople every year, and they would always talk about the different things they do. And we have gap conversations and these kind of conversations. And I learned so many different ways, and we even had a style of closing, which I have found extremely effective, and we included in our sales side of things. And I think it probably works best with coaches, maybe not for everyone else. But the point is that there were so many different, methods and processes and things. I got more confident by building my own way of doing sales, by bringing all these experts in, and then of course having to deal with the mindset and what's going on and having those goals. I think what happens is people actually start to turn to marketing as a crutch for not being good at sales. So they spend a huge amount of time on marketing by bring as many prospects as possible so that at least one will buy from me, right? I don't have to sell them because they just immediately want to buy from me. And I would go the opposite direction, which is spend less time on marketing. If you've got enough prospects, work on them. And when you need more prospects, then you go to marketing. But so we've seen that as a crutch. And I would say spend more time learning about sales and mastering your mindset around sales, and also developing your sales process.
This was great. And I know we have about 8 minutes left on this segment. And this is what I kind of wanted to do, is really scratch the surface of some of these things, because you can really go so in depth on some of these, because sales really goes to the root of who you are and what your business is. So a lot of that foundational groundwork isn't necessary to be, the top salesperson. Ideally, you probably don't even need to do any marketing if you have all that other stuff in place. People just come to you.
Yeah.
Not like the whole life cycle of the business, but ideally you get to that point. I see the most successful business owners, they almost don't need to market. They could market to get, then they'd have to, build out more capacity. But Pradnya, I did want to just have you guys both say, and I'll start with you, kind of what you're selling and who your ideal customer is to buy that product.
As a mindset coach, what I'm selling is you understanding what your mindset is and not stopping there, but being able to guide your thinking, your emotions, your internal state from that place, cultivating habits so you can create the results. So it's really inner work combined with the outer action. That's why I call it mindset coaching. And who I serve is purpose and impact driven entrepreneurs, professionals, and individuals. And you might say, well, how do I know? Well, do you have a desire to leave this world in a better place than you inherited? Do you have a desire to, or innate knowing that there is more in you that you need to contribute that you haven't been able to yet? And that you want to leave your legacy behind? And it's not your legacy is about difference you make in the world. But if you have those desires, then do not let your mindset hold you back. Rather, choose to work on it, because then the strategy lines up as a next step. And then the last thing that I'll say about something that you said earlier, how people come to you. And I think this goes to what Cory teaches people, relationship sales, right? Of course, when you're really rendering tremendous value, then in that case, your clients start identifying referrals for you. Some of your clients become your affiliates. Then some of your colleagues who might be in different industry, because you have taken the time to understand their business and help them, they choose to reciprocate. So really, again, it's a whole cycle of the stages that business goes through. But I'll let Cory chime in, because that's his area of expertise.
I did just want to clarify, Cory, before I let you try, that I was actually really speaking about a specific class of product, or really kind of solopreneurs who the best ones we see in our networks, they don't need to market if they don't want to. A lot of them don't want to, but they're not going to get to that, $1 million or $10 million business without marketing. Say if you sell Pepsi, Pepsi's not going to just stop advertising, even though they could sell it without it. But so yeah, I am interested in your comments on that, because I know you took objection to that with good reason.
Yeah, so I agree with Pradnya, just in terms of what she was talking about and referral marketing, where my expertise is more of like, how do I make that actually intentional and to develop those relationships. She talks about sales tracking and knowing your numbers. It's the same with referrals, knowing your numbers, tracking your relationships, and there's more into it, which is investing in relationships. And what does that take? It takes time, right? It takes effort and a willingness to know those people, because they become in many ways some of your best salespeople. So that's a whole different animal. It's something that I thought was interesting is when you talk about the marketing is one of the salespeople that really kind of blew my mind. He was in the former company. He was the top salesperson in the company. And for many years, the people on this side of the pond, we were promoting our business through the referral organization. And he came in and he said, just no way to do that. He says, if 5% of your referral organization is 200 people, I can get through all those people in a single day of phone calls. And I still will only pick up, a tenth of the business that I did in a year. And that made me realize that it's, sales is really important, as well as, building the prospect pipeline and contacting those prospects. And that's where people really fail, is contacting the prospects that they have in their pipeline. And so what I do is help people see where it is that they're stuck on that, right? So it's not just the mindset, it's also just not realizing the steps they need to take step by step within their business, and then where they're encountering resistance doing that, will work on the goals, the vision, and reconnecting them with their purpose. So in many ways, I do mindset work, but sometimes it's a lighter mindset work. And if they're really, really, really stuck, then we say, okay, it's time to do a program where you can get out of your own way.
Yeah, I'll just say that, Cory, you really helped me with something you call a CRM, customer retention management system. And you're hugely, you set up my whole system of this referral system, which is the most, which once you set that up and you operate it, then that's basically your marketing. But we'll get into that more. I'll let Pradnya react to that. And we are going to wrap up in about a minute so we can regroup for part 2 with Pradnya on the ripple effect.
So again, David, your question was about CRM or tools?
I'm curious. Well, if you have a reaction to what Cory said, but
oh yeah, I do actually.
Yeah.
If now I get it. Okay. Again, Cory is right on the money when he talks about the processes. Okay, you can do the mindset work, but remember this: mindset is like sharpening the axe. What tree are you chopping? Are you just gonna say, "Hey, I have such a sharp, axe"? Well, good for you, but what are you doing with it, right? And this is where, but again, you don't put the cart before the horse. So you sharpen your axe, but then you need to know step by step, which channel am I going to embrace? Is it offline, online, relationship-based marketing, affiliate marketing? And marketing is, again, pre-sales. It just really helps you educate and enable your prospective clients so they're willing to come to you for more value. And I totally believe in marketing is nothing but an opportunity to provide immense value. When your prospective client gets immense value, he or she raises the hand to come to a conversion event or to a consult. And that is where it becomes a path of mutual agreement, because then, first of all, they have partly sold themselves. And when they come to the event, they're really hearing exactly the problems that they're facing, the solution that you're providing, the transformation that you are alluding to. And thereby, they're willing to jump in. They're willing to move forward with you with their own volition. So again, I totally agree with what Cory was saying there. And again, there are both sides to it.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, Cory, if you had a quick note, otherwise we're going to wrap up this segment. Folks, if you are just joining us or you joined late, Pradnya is going to be on the ripple effect coming up. So check out part 2. And thanks so much. A great conversation on sales. We'll look forward to drilling down on this topic more and possibly talking more to you about it in the second half of this year. So thanks a lot, Cory. I'm going to end the broadcast there.
Thank you, Cory.
Thank you, Pradnya.
Bye, everyone.